Today we are doing my mid-month check-in for November 2022. November mid-month check-ins feel like they're, stressful is not quite the right word, but they feel, I guess, weighty to me because it's my reckoning with the fact that I'm officially in the last stretch of books that can qualify for my end of the year list because I cut that off at the end of November. So I go like December 1st to November 30th. Yeah, I only have a few weeks, not few, I have 2 weeks left basically to read what I want to read before the end of my list year. And I always like have certain things that I have in mind of like, oh, okay, I want to make sure I get to this because I think it could make a list if, you know, it's a new release or if I'm working on a series or whatever, like I want to prioritize that, but then I'm also a mood reader, so I don't know. Anyway, I'm rambling, but it just generally, it feels like there's more significance to some of the reading choices that I make in November. But so far it has been incredibly productive because I have been doing the things that I was hoping to do in November. So things that I won't cover today, but have been a big part of the reading for the month so far are, I did a binge read of The Innkeeper's Chronicles, most of which was a reread. One new read so far, which was Sweep With Me, which I liked. It was a novella. And I have one book left, Sweep of the Blade. I read it a little out of order. We'll find out if that was a mistake, but I decided to finish up all of the existing Dina and Sean books and then read Maud's book. Oh, man, I really do love that world. It is interesting bringing kind of a more critical lens to it because, you know, when I'm rereading for the podcast, I tend to have, you know, a little bit more less just like going with the flow and more me like actively thinking about it. So I do have some thoughts and like critiques and stuff, but yeah, overall that was super enjoyable. And then I was beta reading a mystery novel, so that I, you know, wanted to take my time with, and I reread little sections of it and getting all my notes together. So in terms of what I've read, those were big things that don't like really make my spreadsheet, but were significant parts of my reading in the first half of the month. But in terms of things that I've read that I'm not going to talk about now, I'm going to talk about them at the end of the month. This was a hit. This was a big disappointment. I probably need to like take some distance so that I'm coherent about my problems with that book. And in a way that is not spoilery, that's going to be a struggle. But I'm not going to talk about those now, but I did read them. I should say that it is Nonfiction November, and this Nonfiction November, I decided that I'm gonna focus on non-traditional nonfiction, lots of nons in that sentence. I'm trying to focus on graphic novels or sort of less academic type nonfiction, which is often what I go for. I do like a memoir, but I also, you know, I tend to like to read like a book about science or sociology or history, whatever, politics, current events, all those things. And I am still covering those topics, but I'm doing it in a less kind of dense form so that I have more recommendations for people of non-traditional nonfiction. So two ones that fell into that category were these. This is a biography and this is sort of reportage, I guess. So The Queen of Wands, the story of Pamela Coleman Smith, the artist behind the Rider-Waite Tarot deck by Kat Willett. This was at Parnassus and I was there for Alexa's book signing, and so I saw this and it called to me because I do really like that particular tarot deck. And I would say that this was good. I think that the standout was really the illustrations. I really enjoyed the actual art. And especially when the artist kind of recreated some of the cards like that. I thought that was great. So I definitely really like the art, and it was fun to learn a little bit more about basically an artist whose work was definitely co-opted by the powerful men in her life who we kind of don't give enough credit to. So I appreciated that. I wouldn't say that this was the most substantive biography I've ever read, but if the subject matter is interesting to you and you like the idea of a biography of an artist with art included with it, which I think this has, I would recommend this. I think that this was well worth encountering. So a random pick, but one that I did enjoy. And then I also read the Ukrainian and Russian Notebooks, Life and Death Under the Soviet Rule by Igor. So this is two different volumes, basically, which I don't think I'd understood when I picked this up. There is the Ukrainian notebook, and then there's the Russian notebook. Of the two, I preferred the Ukrainian notebook, but I thought they were both great. And really, I'd originally picked this up because I saw someone, I think it was Remembered Reads, had picked this up on Instagram program. And, you know, back when the conflict in the war first broke out earlier this year, I was just interested in learning more about the history between these two countries. And I'm, you know, excitingly learned a lot more about Ukrainian history since then, which has been very interesting. The Ukrainian, I'll say that the Russian part of the notebooks is dealing with the assassination of a journalist in Russia. I think her name is Anya, is that right? Anna Politkovskaya, who was basically a big critic of Putin, speaking out against the Chechenian invasion, and like she was assassinated for it. So Igor is apparently, from what I've surmised at least, an Italian reporter or an Italian sort of like artist. Yeah, he's an Italian comics artist and illustrator. He's written 13 graphic novels and has been published in 15 different languages. So yeah, so it's him like kind of doing reportage while he was living in this region. And then, so that's the Russian half of this. What I think is really, really good is the Ukrainian half, because it is a graphic, and I will say it's this is a very intense thing to have in a graphic novel. In some ways this reminds me a little bit of Mouse. Basically, he is documenting firsthand accounts of the Holodomor, which was it's the same thing that the Red Famine, that book that Anne Applebaum wrote. It's basically a genocidal event via famine that was perpetrated by Stalin against the Ukrainian people. And so it is firsthand accounts of that, which is very intense, but really, really well done. I think that this, if I were going to tell you a book to read about the Holodomor, I would recommend the Ukrainian notebooks over the Anne Applebaum, because I mean, that was a good book. I just don't love her writing style. I find it kind of dense and not very, like, I don't think it's very approachable nonfiction. It's good information, but I never really enjoy reading her books. And it's not that I enjoyed reading this, but I found this to be a more impactful introduction to that specific historical event. So I really like this and would definitely recommend it. And yeah, this was well worth seeking out, so I'm glad that somebody posted that. I continued my buddy reading with Leanna on City of Dragons by Robin Hobb, which is the third in the 4 books of the Rainwild Chronicles. We will finish the Rainwild Chronicles next month. And I continue to be the weirdo who really, really likes this series. I think that there were some really exciting plot developments in this. So if what you didn't like about Dragonhaven was the plot kind of coming to a little bit of a halt, which I get, like things happened, but it was a long book for how much plot there was. This one is shorter. I think this is the shortest book in the whole series, and a lot more plot is happening, but it still has the themes that I'm really engaged with in terms of, like, frankly, women's reproductive choices and health and the implications of that. The same way that I felt like Live Ship Traders was a lot about women trying to find their voice in a very patriarchal society and the different ways they choose to approach that. This series thematically to me seems to be a lot about women's reproductive choices, what choices they have and don't have, kind of the weight of them when it's their bodies on the line versus the men in their lives. And then layered on top of that, a lot of themes about disability. So I like the plot. I really like these characters. I don't think it's her best written series, but I personally am really enjoying it. I continued to enjoy this one. I gave this one 4 stars as well. I think I've given all of the books in this series 4 stars. So to me so far, this has been the most readable and consistent series of her, even if I wouldn't argue that it's the best. And I am a Rainwild's apologist. Now, she does often kind of not give me an ending I love, so we'll see what happens. But I am really, like, where we leave Rain and Malta and what's going on with them. The epilogue about Tintaglia I thought was great. Hest getting into the mix. I don't know, we've got a lot happening and I'm really into all of it. Oh, and then I wanted to mention that I basically DNF'd Desperation in Death. This isn't a bad book, I just can't deal with the subject matter. This is a Jeffrey Epstein-esque kind of police procedural plot. So I did sort of a skim read of this to try to find kind of some of the key character moments, but this was just too much for me. It's not what I want from the series. And I'm trying to think, I don't know that I've ever had another one where I had to do that. So for me, the In Death series definitely can go very dark. Eve has a very intense backstory of childhood trauma and assault, so it definitely has moments of that in the series, but that being the plot, even though there's been other plots that kind of have similar elements, there was something about this one that was just too much for me personally. So I kind of gave this a skim read, but I'm not really counting this as a full read, and yeah, it was just too much for me. So FYI, if you are a reader of this series, just know that. I'm a completionist, but I try to be aware of things that are triggering for me or that are just not what I need from a book, and that was just not what I need from that series. But I will look forward to picking up the next one in February when it comes out. And usually when she has like a really heavy one, the next one isn't as intense, so I'm looking forward to that. And then things I can tell you about that I don't have in physical form. Sorry, pulling up my little Google Drive document here. Oh, I read When She's Pregnant by Ruby Dixon. Short, it's a short story. It's not even a novella, and I would not say it's her best, but I felt like it was a nice little shot of what Ruby Dixon does well. Basically the setup is that one of our colonists on Rizda has saved up her money to get a fertility treatment, and the dude she thought she'd lined up to, you know, help her out, ducks out. So she, like, in a frenzy goes to essentially what's like the sheriff's office in town and is like, I need one of you to get me pregnant. And the guy who's there, he's like, and things ensue from there. So, I thought that it was cute. It's not a very fully developed story, but I thought it was a fun version of what she does. Oh yeah, The Red Scholar's Wake, I read by Aliette de Bodard. This is the first novel I've read from that author, and it was an interesting reading experience because I continue to love her imagination. I really like her world building. I like the kind of stories she tells. So like the plot type I enjoy. This one is basically sort of like a marriage of convenience trope and like trying to find out whodunit plot, but in space, with a space pirate sentient spaceship who gets married to this woman. And it's sapphic. There's plenty of things that I like about this. The reason I rated this the lowest of the things I've read from her, though, is that I struggled with this as a full novel because the character development remained pretty flat, which in a novella I'm more okay with. Like, I'm more okay with kind of filling in all of the contours of the character in my mind and not having it on the page. In a novel, I want a little bit more, and I just felt like that kind of wasn't there. So that was interesting to me because I had not tried a full-length work from her, and maybe my takeaway is that I just need to stick with her novellas. I don't know, I'm not opposed to trying another novel from her, and I think if you like those elements and character stuff is not as important to you in speculative fiction, you very well could enjoy it more than I did. But I still had a good time with it. I gave it 3 stars. I thought it was like fine. That's to me like a B. So it was fine, it was good. Definitely not my favorite from her and not super memorable. Speaking of not super memorable, I finally read Miss Aldridge Regrets by Louise Hare, which was technically an advanced reader copy, but I didn't get it until after it came out, so I always deprioritize those in terms of trying to get to them. Whew, let's see here. What can I say about it? Because I'm literally sitting here like, what was this even about? Basically, this was a historical murder mystery that I think is utterly forgettable. I read it probably a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, and I'm struggling to remember much about it. It's basically a murder plot on a transatlantic voyage from London to New York. And our main character is going to New York for some reason. I can't even remember why, but like this guy has arranged for her to go. I think she's like an actress, and somebody dies and she gets swept up in the plot. It was perfectly enjoyable. It was fine, but aside from that setting being kind of cool, there's just nothing. It's been 2 weeks and I can barely remember anything about this book. So if that tells you anything, I think it's fine. It's good. Just not, to me, like a standout. And then I guess the only other thing I can mention is I did read A Bump and Boo Hail by Kimberly Lemming, which was the Halloween short story in the Mead and Mishaps series she's doing. It's like a fantasy romance series, and it was short, smutty. It was just like a cute little Halloween short story. Not memorable, but fun. Like, it gave me what I wanted it to give me. I felt very similarly about it to When She's Pregnant, which is not the best in that series and like not super memorable, but like it was fun to be back in that world. Not mad I read it. And then in terms of what I'm currently reading, the only thing I'm technically currently reading is Chasing Ghosts, A Tour of Our Fascination with Spirits and the Supernatural by Mark Hartzman. And I'm like, I don't know, like 40-ish pages into this thing. So not a lot of impressions yet, but this is in the same vein of the trying to have some like non-conventional nonfiction going in Nonfiction November. So far I'm enjoying this, but not a lot of thoughts yet. And then in terms of what I might read next, well, maybe let's finish up the other nonfiction. I keep dropping books recently, man. I'm just turning into a book butterfingers. Okay, there are 4 other non-conventional, like basically most of these are graphic novels that I'm hoping I get to. The Best We Could Do by T. Bowie is an illustrated memoir that I forget who recommended this to me. I want to say maybe Ashley from Bookish Realm, but I've had this for about a year, so I decided this is the month to read it. I just picked up Toils and Trouble, A Women's History of the Occult, and basically this is a bunch of little mini biographies of women in history who have had some association with the occult, and so I thought I picked this up during spooky season. It seems like it's kind of like a little coffee table-esque book. Like, it's really pretty, so we'll see how that goes. I'm finally gonna read Run by John Lewis, which is the follow-up to March. March is one of my all-time favorite memoir nonfiction kind of things, so I'm expecting that this is going to be great. This is about his run for the US Congress, and he is no longer with us, but he was a very long-serving congressman from the state of Georgia, so I'm excited to find out more about that time in his life. And then the last nonfiction book I'm hoping I get to is Seek You, A Journey Through American Loneliness by Kristen Radke. This was one that was recommended to me by either a patron or a member when I was doing my tournament of books, and it's a graphic novel, and I just thought that that sounded like a really interesting topic. So yeah, that's the last of the nonfiction I am hoping to read. Then really the only other plans I am making, one, probably tomorrow, maybe even tonight, I'm going to read Sweep of the Blade so that I will be ready for the podcast episodes. So I should mention, podcast second season of Changeling Cast is back, and there's going to be an episode a week till we get through the series. There's also going to be a bonus episode on Blood Heir. I posted the intro already, and when you are seeing this tomorrow, there will be the first episode about a book. So if you have not read the Innkeeper's Chronicles, or if you have read it and you just want to do a reread, I would love for you to read along with me. It's a really fun series. The books are not very long. They're usually between 250 and 300-ish pages, and they're just really fun. Like a pretty unique world setup. I can't really think of another series that it super reminds me of in terms of the premise, which is basically that Earth is the Atlanta airport of the galaxy, and so we are a neutral planet, and we have these like basically magical type things called inns, which are these bed and breakfasts basically where people, like different aliens species, come and stay, and the innkeeper in the inn has supernatural abilities on the inn grounds to keep everybody safe. So basically this is how you can have, you know, warring factions staying in the same place, because the innkeeper can kick some ass if need be. And our innkeeper is Dina DeMille. Her parents were innkeepers who mysteriously vanished, so that's sort of the macro plot, as she's trying to find what happened to them because nobody knows. In the meantime, she's like early on starting her own inn, and she's trying to move up the rankings of the ratings that inns have, and she gets into a lot of trouble along the way. And the reason it qualifies for Changeling Cast is that her love interest is a space werewolf. So it's such a fun series. It reads more like a sci-fi series, like a cozy sci-fi, than really a romance, because as is pretty typical for Alona Andrews, it's a very slow burn romance. Like, they don't really get together until a few books in. So if you're romance shy, but that sounds like a fun plot setup, you might also like this. So anyway, that is definitely something I'm gonna read. In terms of something else I have that is not in physical form that I would like to read, I've said this like 5 times, so I might be just fooling myself, but I really would like to finish Mark of Athena so that I can keep moving in the Heroes of Olympus series, because I'm supposed to finish that series by February to keep up with my planned series TBR. So I would like to do that. I would also potentially like to read a couple of books in the Bridal Quartet from Nora Roberts for the same reason. And then these are the 3 most important ones aside from Sweep of the Blade that I would really like to get to, and really 2 of these are the most important. So number 3 is Amari and the Great Game. I would like to read this month so that I can be caught up in the series and so that I can find out if I want to put it on a list. The 2 that I really, really want to make sure I get to this month, though, are Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree, both because it might end up on a list, but also because I think it's going to make it to the final round of the Goodreads Choice Awards, which I did a live voting. Thanks for those of you who came and hung out to do that. And I am going to do a live voting in the final round, which will be, I guess, a week from Tuesday when you're seeing this. So if you want to come hang out for that. But yeah, anyway, so I really want to read this before that final round of voting so that if I want to vote for this, I can. And then Barchester Towers, that is the kind of bigger one. That is gonna be my weekend project, is to read this, and I'm expecting to really love it. I think that this could make an end of the year list, so that is part of why I wanna do it. And also because this is on my series plan that I was supposed to read this before February, so why not now? So yeah, I think that covers my plans for the rest of November's reading. I feel really good about how things have gone so far, even though I haven't had a ton of hits, I would say, like things that were real standouts. I've had a lot of productivity, and I'm also just like pretty much enjoying most of what I'm reading, even if it's not getting super highly rated. So yeah, I mean, I feel like it's been a pretty good reading month, and I'm cheering for myself to get through these last few books before the end of November. And then I do look forward to December because it is my most purely mood reading month of the year, which is pretty enjoyable for me because I'm so busy filming all of my end of the year lists and, you know, the holidays, all that. It's a busy month, so I give myself a lot of permission just to truly freeball at whatever I'm in the mood for. So I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, I think that will do it for me. Let me know how your reading in November has gone so far. Let me know what you thought about any of the books that I mentioned. And yeah, I think that will do it for me. So if you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, follow me on the social medias if you are so inclined. I have all that information listed in the description box below, and I think that will do it. I hope you're having an absolutely lovely day today, and I will just talk to you soon. Bye!